Hey everyone, it's Claire Rogers from iTopia Coaching. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and thank you very much for checking back in. So this week I want to talk about people pleasing as well as the need for approval. And I want to talk about specifically how our need for approval or people pleasing tendencies can negate our own feelings to such a degree that we do not end up living the life that we desire because we put other people's feelings ahead of our own. And the reason why we put other people's feelings ahead of our own is for a myriad of reasons, to include fear of judgment from other people. We don't want to be seen as being selfish, assuming people will be mad if we say no. So effectively, we are avoiding conflict. We also are feeling guilty or anxious if we say no. We also feel as though we may not have the right to say no because we think that other people's feelings are more important than our own. And also, we don't know ourselves well enough. Sometimes we don't realize that we actually have the right to have boundaries. We don't need to be people pleasers, but we don't actually realize that because we don't know ourselves that well. And ultimately, what we end up doing is we end up as people pleasers and people who are seeking approval, we invalidate our own needs in favor of others. So before I carry on, I want to mention two things. One is, if you'll see that I'm looking at paper, it's actually my iTopia coaching program that I'm referring to, in case you're wondering what I was reading. And also, I wanted to clarify, you might be wondering how I come up with some of the topics that I'm talking about each week in my videos. The topics I'm coming up with are the very issues that I've had in my own life and is actually based on some of my coaching programs as well. So I have direct experience from this. So I am a former people pleaser. I am a former person who needed approval. And I'll give you an example, as I do in each of my videos. To demonstrate my authenticity, I really think it's important that I share my own story. So here we go. So I was a pretty anxious kid growing up, and to avoid conflict, I became a people pleaser. And what I did is I actually carried on those tendencies as an adult, and I became a people pleaser, seeking approval as an adult. But I didn't really have an awareness back then as to how that people pleasing or that need for approval was impacting my life as an adult. Let me give you an example. So, when I was in corporate life, I was a director, I had a team of people working for me, and I worked in multiple time zones, meaning that most of my clients and my colleagues I would be liaising with in Europe, America, Asia, as well as Australia, meaning that I was working quite often long, extensive hours. And I remember a request came up to me that said, XYZ client wants you to be on a conference call every Wednesday night at 11 o'clock at night, your time. And the reason why they want you on the call, there's going to be about 14 people on the call. The reason why they want you on the call is they just want a director on the call, meaning they wanted somebody senior on the call. So I initially said no. Said that's not going to work for me because that's every Wednesday night. I have to do that 11 o'clock at night. And that's going to go on until midnight, the call. It'll probably overrun. It'll probably go on to like 12:30 a.m. my time. And then I've got to get up early and function the next day. I initially said no, but when I saw the look of disappointment on my boss's face, and she said to me, well, can't you just try it out? And I was like, okay, well, I don't really want to let her down. So, I could probably try it out. I did. And guess what? I tried it out for 2 years. For 2 years, every Wednesday night, I would sit on a call from 11 o'clock at night until about 12:30 in the morning. And do you know how I contributed to that call? I would say hello, and then I would say good evening at the end of the call because I wasn't needed on the call. So that's just an example of how my need for approval, because I didn't want to disappoint my boss at the time, impeded my life for 2 years. I'll go even further than that. I would quite often have a holiday booked for a long weekend, and then again, I would see the look of disappointment or the nod of disapproval, knowing that I'd be out of the office for a couple of days. And so I used to cancel holidays, and it would cost me thousands of dollars doing so. Another example is several years ago, I signed up to do a cooking course each week. I think it was on a Tuesday night. And then invariably a last minute conference call would come in. And so every week, without fail, I would usually miss this cooking course that I had signed up for. And again, I lost thousands of dollars doing so. Now, that's a pretty extreme example, I realize that. And I'm not suggesting that you go into work tomorrow and you start saying no to things. That's not going to work for you. And if I'm being totally honest, if I had communicated my boundaries back in the day in corporate life, I'm not sure that they would have been honored, if I'm honest with you. I'm not sure that there would have been a quick fix there. But what I am saying is there could have been an opportunity for me to say, well, you know what? This call every Wednesday at 11 o'clock at night is not working for me. But how about as a solution or a compromise is I join every second week? Or how about I join once a month instead? But I didn't have that conversation. And so therefore I allowed my boundaries to be crossed for 2 years because I was seeking approval. I didn't want to disappoint people. So if you're finding that your boundaries are being crossed at work, you're working too many hours, or you're agreeing to things that are just not working for you because they're impacting your personal life, I am not suggesting there's a quick fix. I'm not suggesting that your boundaries will be respected. But what I am suggesting is possibly you could go into work to say, you know what, XYZ is not working for me, but how about as a compromise, I do XYZ instead? At least by communicating your boundaries, possibly a solution that's mutually beneficial for both parties can be agreed to. There's no promises there. And as I say, in my previous life, in my previous job, I'm not sure that that would have worked for me, but it's a suggestion. Now, you may not have those issues when it comes to boundaries at work, but you may have boundaries that are impeding your personal life, whereby you say yes to things that you feel obliged to say yes to, but really you mean no. For example, do you agree to baking cookies at a bake sale that you don't have time for? Do you agree to babysitting somebody's child that you don't have time for? Or driving kids to various lessons that you don't have time for? Or do you agree to participate in extracurricular activities that you just don't have time for, but you don't say no for fear of a negative reaction? Now, I watched a lady give a speech, I want to say like 5 years ago. I can't remember her name, unfortunately, but I remember she had a big impact on me because the speech was all about how she didn't have any boundaries herself. But in order to correct the behavior, she just did this one simple thing. So whenever a request came up to her, be it in her personal life or professional life, she would take a moment, she would pause, she would not respond straight away like most of us want to, and she'd listen to her gut and she'd say to herself, is my response to this request a hell yeah or a hell no? If her instinct says, hell yeah, I want to do this, then absolutely she'd agree to. But if her gut instinct said, hell no, then she'd say no. But she wouldn't offer an excuse or a justification. She would just say no. I'm afraid that's not going to work for me. And I remember listening to that thinking, wow, that's amazing. You see, she realized that no is a complete sentence. You don't need to explain and justify why you can't do something. You don't need to be a people pleaser. Other people's feelings and needs are not more important than your own. So when I listened to that speech, that's exactly what I started doing in my life. And like I say, I roughly think that's about 5 years ago. And I can honestly say I'm not a people pleaser at all anymore. I don't have the disease to please. That doesn't mean that I want to hurt people or be unkind, but what it means is that I listen to my feelings before I validate somebody else's. So you might be initially thinking to yourself, well, actually, that makes me selfish. If you were to honor your own feelings above others, doesn't that make me a selfish person? And I would say, no, it doesn't. Because the thing that we need to realize is that by establishing our own boundaries, by setting them, communicating them, and committing to them, it's actually an act of self care. It actually will reduce our own stress levels and our anxiety. It will claw back our time and it will make us happier people, which in turn will make us nicer people to be around because we're honoring our own feelings. It will also improve our relationships with others because others will understand what we stand for and what we don't stand for. So to conclude, if you are a people pleaser, if you're seeking approval, if you have got the disease to please, I want to leave you with this. Remember that your feelings are just as valid as somebody else's. You matter. You are worthy of setting, communicating, and committing to your boundaries. You don't need to invalidate your feelings in favor of other people's approval. And remember, no is a complete sentence. So one of the first steps that you can take towards lessening your people-pleasing tendencies is asking yourself that question when a request comes up to you. Is it a hell yeah or is it a hell no response? And listen to your gut. I hope that was really helpful. Now, I'm really cognizant of the fact that my videos can sound like sound bites on very comprehensive subjects. My videos are normally between 10 and 15 minutes long, and these subjects are very comprehensive. So if this video resonated with you and you think, wow, I really want some help with that, then contact me directly or consider as well joining my online self-directed coaching program, which is called Getting Out of the Rut by Getting Unstuck. You can see a banner for that behind me. That's an online program where you'd work through some of these issues yourself over a 12-week period. There's a variety of subjects that we cover, and one of them is lessening your need for approval and committing to boundaries. Moreover, I've also got a master coaching program whereby I go through the 12-week program with a group of 6 people at a time, and we work through these issues together. So if that's of interest, then please check out my website, www.itopiacoaching.com, or email me directly. And again, I will put my contact details at the bottom of this page. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And don't forget to check back in next week. Take care. I really hope you have a great week ahead. Bye.